Have you ever looked in a mirror and felt like the reflection staring back at you just didn't quite match who you felt you were?
Oh, yeah. That is a surprisingly common feeling.
Right. Or, say you've worked really hard at some physical goal, you've been super consistent, and then a friend pulls you aside and says, "Wow, you look so different."
Yeah.
But you completely fail to see it yourself.
Yeah, you just see the exact same person you were 6 months ago. It can be a really disorienting experience.
It really is. And normally I feel like society just tells you to brush that off. Like it's just low self-esteem or maybe a bit of body dysmorphia.
Exactly. We tend to just assume the mirror gives us the ultimate objective truth, and, well, our brains are just being stubborn.
Yeah. But today, we're doing a deep dive into something really fascinating. We're looking at a thesis by Caroline Berger de Femini, who's the founder of a Bio-Pilates studio in Paris.
And an incredibly experienced Stott Pilates and gyrotonic instructor, too.
Right. And she explores this very specific phenomenon. She had a student who had objectively transformed her body through Pilates, but confessed she, quote, didn't see herself like that.
Which is such a powerful admission.
It is. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the science and the psychology behind that disconnect. We want to uncover what the author calls the great secret of Pilates, both on the mat and, on the equipment.
To really get to that great secret, we have to kind of look past the basic biomechanics. It's not just about muscles. We have to dive into this highly complex, often delayed dialogue between physical reality and our subjective self-perception.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my mind immediately goes to like a technology analogy. Is this disconnect kind of like a smartphone's GPS using an outdated downloaded map?
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, say the physical roads in your city have already been completely rebuilt. The asphalt is there. But your phone hasn't updated the software yet, so it's telling you you're driving through an empty field. Is that what's happening?
That is a brilliant analogy. Yes, in psychology and sports science, that's exactly what happens.
Really?
Yeah, your physical infrastructure gets upgraded, but the internal software is still running the old code. And to understand why that internal GPS takes so long to update, we first have to separate how you view yourself into two distinct scientific concepts.
Okay, what are they?
The thesis explores them as the body schema and the body image.
I feel like people just use those interchangeably, though. Like schema, image, it's all just how I see my body, right?
They do sound similar, but neurologically, they are radically different. Let's start with the body schema.
Okay.
So early research defines the body schema as your functional neurosensory map of the body in movement and posture.
Basically, the physical coordinates.
Exactly. It's completely integrated into your central nervous system. It's the reason you can say, close your eyes right now and still touch your nose.
Because it relies on sensory and proprioceptive feedback.
Right, and visuospatial feedback. You don't have to look at your arm to know where it is. It's an active working map.
So the body schema is essentially this purely functional thing.
Yeah.
It's just the hardware communicating with the software to keep you moving.
Yes. But then, in contrast, you have the body image. And the body image is heavily, heavily subjective.
It's the emotional side of things.
Totally. It is
Yeah.
built on emotional evaluations, aesthetic judgments, societal norms. It carries your personal history and sometimes, even trauma.
So the schema is just the raw coordinates, but the image is all the emotional baggage and opinions you've attached to those coordinates over your whole life.
You nailed it. And the source reveals that this is exactly where the clash happens.
How so?
Well, when Pilates changes the physical body, the body schema starts receiving new sensory experiences. It needs time to synthesize them, but it is adapting.
Right, because the body is moving differently.
But meanwhile, the body image fiercely resists that change. It's weighed down by deep-seated mental habits and all those internalized critiques.
Oh, wow. So you get this psychological dissonance.
Exactly. The new, objectively modified body feels strange to the practitioner, or the changes just go entirely unnoticed.
But wait, I got to push back on this.
Yeah.
Because if the physical changes are tangible, like if your clothes literally fit differently, how can the mind's body image just stubbornly ignore hard empirical evidence?
I know, it sounds illogical.
I mean, if my jeans are literally falling off,
Yeah.
the brain has to concede defeat at some point.
Right. What's fascinating here is that the body image isn't just a passive reflection. It is a dynamic, heavily defended psychological construct.
Heavily defended,
Yeah.
meaning it doesn't want to change.
Right. Your mind actively protects those old emotional frameworks. It has built an identity around them. It won't just let go until the body slowly, methodically convinces it otherwise through repeated conscious movement.
Man, it's like the brain is covering its ears going, nope, not listening, until the body just overwhelms it.
That's exactly it. Which brings up a big question. If the mind's adaptation lags behind, what exactly is happening to the physical body during that lag? And, what is the timeline of those changes?
Yeah, let's talk methodology, because the author actually measured this, didn't she?
She did. This study tracked a group of women over a 6-month period, and they specifically chose women aged 18 to 45.
Wait, why? That specific age range, that seems kind of narrow.
It was intentional. They wanted to minimize age-related physiological variations, like major hormonal shifts or menopause, so they could isolate the actual effects of the Pilates.
Okay, that makes total sense. So how do you actually measure a physical change versus an emotional lag?
They used a really rigorous mix of tools. For the subjective side, they used things like the Body Awareness Questionnaire and the Body Image Questionnaire.
To track how the women actually felt.
Exactly. But then for the objective side, they used highly precise tools, things like postural photogrammetry.
Okay, hold on. Postural photogrammetry. That sounds very intense.
It is pretty advanced. It's basically using specific markers and software to measure exact joint angles and spinal curves down to the millimeter.
Oh, wow, like a motion capture suit.
Very much like that. They paired that with classic anthropometric measurements and bioimpedance to get exact ratios of lean mass to fat.
So they have the hard mathematical data layered right over the emotional data.
And what the expert findings show is a very specific 2-phase timeline. Let's break down phase 1, which is 0 to 3 months.
Okay, the first 3 months of doing Pilates, what happens?
In this initial period, the changes are purely tonico-postural and neuromuscular.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, Pilates prioritizes deep stabilizing muscles. So we're talking about the transverse abdominis, the multifidus along the spine, the pelvic floor.
Not the surface muscles like a six-pack.
Right, the deep internal support structures. And the postural photogrammetry proved that in this phase, there were significant reductions in anterior pelvic tilt, and they saw improved lumbar lordosis.
Okay. Translating that for myself, anterior pelvic tilt is when your hips dump forward, right?
Right.
And lumbar lordosis is the natural curve of your lower back.
Spot on. So the structural foundation is literally shifting.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because during that first 3-month phase, the body hasn't necessarily lost weight or changed external size yet, right?
Correct. The scale might not move at all.
But the body is operating completely differently. So is the delay in self-perception happening because this first phase is essentially invisible to the mirror?
That is exactly what's happening.
It's entirely internal and structural.
Yes, and other studies mentioned in the text completely back this up. This is why the disconnect occurs. The deep muscles and those micropostural adjustments change your internal reality long before your superficial silhouette changes.
So you functionally feel different, but you look the same.
Precisely. It's not until phase 2, which is the 3 to 6 month mark, that the external morphological and tissue changes finally consolidate.
Oh, so that's when the anthropometric data showed, like, reduced abdominal circumferences and an increase in lean mass.
Yes. Phase 1 rewrites the deep code. Phase 2 changes the actual external monitor.
Okay, so knowing that this deep internal restructuring happens first, we have to look at the tools of Pilates. How does doing a routine on just a simple foam mat compare to, strapping into one of those complex machines?
To really get that, I should give you a little historical context.
Please do.
In the early 20th century, Joseph Hubertus Pilates created this entire system. He was heavily influenced by his own convalescence from illness, actually.
And he originally called it contrology.
He did. Now, the mat was the origin. It was the minimalist foundation of contrology.
It's just you and gravity.
Exactly. The mat forces the practitioner to focus entirely on internal sensations. You have to coordinate your breath and maintain conscious control without any external aid.
So it's heavily reliant on you just paying attention to your own body.
It heavily promotes autonomy and deep internal listening. But then the introduction of the equipment, things like the reformer, the Cadillac, the Wunda chair, that was a massive turning point.
Because it changes the resistance.
Yes. And interestingly, the thesis found that muscle progression and postural symmetry were actually more pronounced in the equipment group.
Really? More pronounced than just doing it on the floor. Why is that?
Because the machines provide modular mechanical resistance and highly varied proprioceptive stimuli.
Okay, wait, let me try an analogy here.
Go for it.
So if the mat is like learning to sing a cappella by relying entirely on your own internal sense of pitch,
Yeah.
is the reformer kind of like having a vocal coach gently pressing on your diaphragm, giving you physical external feedback to find the right note
Oh, I absolutely love that analogy.
because it physically guides you?
Exactly. The equipment's guided resistance creates a safer, amplified sensory dialogue. When you have those springs pushing and pulling against you, it pushes your body into less explored zones of kinesthetic awareness.
It safely forces you to feel things you wouldn't feel on the mat alone.
Precisely. And because you get that rich feedback, it expands the brain's body maps much faster than mat work alone.
Okay, but whether you're on a mat or a reformer, these physical tools are ultimately just a means to an end, right?
They are. The true magic, the reason Pilates can eventually override that stubborn, outdated body image, lies in how it rewires the brain neurologically.
How does that actually work? What are the mechanics of this mindfulness?
The text emphasizes that Pilates forces an extreme slowing down of motor temporality.
Motor temporality,
Yeah.
meaning just the speed at which you move,
Right. Think about fast automatic sports like running or cycling, you kind of zone out, but Pilates requires you to feel and adjust every micro movement.
which is agonizingly slow sometimes.
It is. But by synchronizing your breath with this extremely slow movement, your autonomic nervous system begins to harmonize.
Okay.
Your brain gets flooded with new afferent proprioceptive signals.
Afferent signals, those are the ones traveling from the muscles up to the brain.
Exactly. Signals from your joints and muscles are constantly sending new data up to your central nervous system. This constant, focused, somatic attention actively stimulates neuroplasticity.
You're literally building new neural pathways.
Yes, you are rewriting the map in real time. Which leads us to the ultimate conclusion of the thesis, the great secret revealed.
Okay, drop the secret on me.
The great secret of Pilates is not its ability to mechanically sculpt a silhouette.
It's not just about getting toned.
No. The secret is its ability to act as an integrative somatic method. It forces a reconciliation between the objective physical body and the subjective mental mind.
So it forces the schema and the image to finally talk to each other.
Exactly. So that feeling of not seeing yourself in the mirror, it isn't a failure. It is simply the sensation of an old body schema slowly maturing and updating into a new conscious identity.
So what does this all mean for the people actually teaching this? If the secret is this forced mindfulness and neuroplasticity, does that mean the instructor's role is actually way more psychological than physical?
The source text confirms exactly that. The pedagogy is absolutely crucial.
Really? In what way?
Well, the verbalization, the precise cues, the personalized physical adjustments, all of that creates a safe psychocorporeal space.
It makes the student feel secure.
Right. And it's that safety provided by the instructor that allows the student to finally drop their psychological defenses and, actually accept their newly transformed body.
Wow. That completely changes how I view walking into a studio. It's not just a workout, it's a therapeutic environment.
It really is.
So to kind of summarize this for you listening, Pilates is far more than an aesthetic workout. It is an invitation to literally reinvent your relationship with your body.
Beautifully said.
It uses breath, mechanical resistance, and this extreme focus to rewrite the outdated maps in your brain, eventually merging your physical reality with your mental self-image.
And, because it is so effective at bridging that gap, the thesis points out some incredibly exciting future applications.
Oh, outside of just regular fitness.
Yes. It has immense therapeutic potential, specifically for treating eating disorders like anorexia or treating dysmorphia, anxiety, and even post-traumatic functional rehabilitation.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
If trauma causes the brain to reject the physical body, this method rebuilds that connection safely.
Exactly. It bypasses the emotional defenses through slow physical reality.
Which leaves me with a pretty provocative thought to throw out to you.
Oh, let's hear it.
We spend so much time looking in mirrors, right? Just trying to change our bodies from the outside in. But if the brain's body schema relies entirely on internal physical sensations to actually update its map, how much of your current dissatisfaction with your body is simply because you haven't given your brain the slow, conscious movement it needs to actually feel who you are right now?